there's going to be a bunch of SMS companies shipping a whole bunch of really, really bad AI features. They're just going to stick chat. They're going to stick GBT inside their product to do back and forth and to write content. And it's going to be unrefined, and it's going to be premature, and it's going to be really bad. And I can't wait.
Welcome back, folks, to another episode of You Are Not Your ROAS, coming to you in person live. We flew him out. Well, we didn't fly him out, but to be fair, he was here, and how am I not going to get a podcast with this guy? The man, the myth, the legend, the SMS slinger himself, Alex Beller. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. It is great to be here. I took a plane, but it was nothing.
Just right. This is movie star stuff. Right off the plane into the podcast.
That's how we do it.
Unbelievable. When did we first met? What, the LA dinner? Was that our first? We kind of known each other peripherally, but then we finally bumped into each other in real life.
I've certainly known who you are in the space for multiple years, but we finally met earlier this year in LA at Grow LA at that dinner, which we blew out, which the Postscript and Triple Well teams absolutely blew out.
Crushed it. Co-founder, president, Postscript, amazing SMS platform. Before we get into all that, where did you start? What was your first foray into entrepreneurship?
This is not a story that I usually tell.
Oh, look, see, people?
Okay.
This is why you tune in.
Went right for it. My first foray into entrepreneurship of note was when I dropped out of school.
Let's go.
So I was in LA.
Yeah.
I was going to school as a young man does.
As you do.
And I was underperforming, let's just say.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even doing it with style. Some people underperform with style. There was nothing to it. And I was working in the music business at the time.
Interesting.
And the music business was getting just absolutely destroyed by the internet. And that made me really interested in the internet and really interested in startups. And so I ended up applying for this internship at this startup called Stack Commerce out in Venice Beach. Bunch of people have kind of come from it, and they gave me an internship. And I dropped out of school and I went to work, and never went back, never finished the degree. But this little startup I joined, it was e-commerce business.
Yep.
And I was probably the fourth or fifth person to join, initially as an intern, then full time, and stayed there for 6 years. And we grew it a bunch, and to about 80 people, about $80 million a year in revenue. And the founder sold it a couple of years ago. So that was following that ride and having my hands super in the weeds on Google Analytics and campaign optimization and all the good stuff of the early 2010s was my entrance to entrepreneurship, my entrance to e-com. That's where it started.
How interesting. Was it challenging? Did you get a lot of because I had that same, I didn't end up dropping out, but I had that same kind of underperformance type of thing where it was and I don't think, and obviously you're not lazy, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it was more so a function of purpose. I hadn't really bit onto something that had really excited me until, to your point, I found Facebook ads. I used to be super nerdy. I used to build websites, do AWS, photography, all this stuff. And then the Facebook ads was this Cambrian explosion. You put $1 in, I get 6 out. Let's put as many dollars in as possible. So how does that happen? And then you go from, crushing it at uni, not really in your thing, move to this, do well there, and then it was Postscript, or you have some intermediary?
Yeah, so like you're saying, was struggling with the purpose side of things.
Yep.
And was blaming the world instead of myself for the struggles.
Yeah.
And was also confused because I didn't think that I was lazy and I didn't think that I was dumb, but the results pointed to both of those things being true. And I just thought okay, I need to put myself in a situation where I can actually not be writing essays, but actually creating work.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Actually doing something that has purpose, trying to build something.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to find my way into this super entrepreneurial environment that was relatively intense. That company that I was at, Stack Commerce, but and I worked for a CEO who I'm so close to. He was quite demanding at times and definitely pushed us, but it was a meritocracy in terms of I rose there a ton. And I got exposure to do things that were way outside my pay grade and scope and experience because I was like pushing and working hard. And that was an amazing experience. And so as that, I was there for 5-6 years, and I tried like little startups of my own along the way too on the side, all complete failures. The beautiful flame outs. And along the way, I was really one of the up and comers on the business and marketing side of things, doing a lot of partnerships, doing a lot of marketing. And I became friends with someone who joined the business who was a data analyst, and then very quickly became a product manager, and then like our lead product manager, super talented, really, really young. And he was like the shining star on the tech side.
Okay.
And we became friends, and that person is Adam Turner, who's my co-founder and our CEO.
No way.
And he came to me as I was transitioning out, because I said, you know what, I want to go consult. I want to have freedom. I want to travel around. And so I put in my notice, and I was going to consult for a bunch of different companies. And I started taking some time off, and really quickly what I realized is that it wasn't freedom that I wanted. I wanted to build my own thing.
Yeah.
And so Adam came to me, and him and his brother, they'd started different things that failed as well. They started one mobile gaming company that had like ramped to a couple 100,000 users, but they didn't know how to monetize it. It fell apart.
Yep.
And through the years, we'd both like separately applied to YC, and no one had gotten in. And they came to me and they said, hey, we're hacking on this idea. We have a friend who runs a business on Shopify, which we were not a part of that ecosystem at all.
Yep.
He said, runs business on Shopify. He's complaining that he doesn't have a way to text his customers.
Yep.
And so we're hacking together this little app. It'll plug into Shopify. Like, you should check it out. And so I took a look at it, and they were just starting to write code, and the three of us started working on it together, and I started bringing in some customers, and we launched, and absolutely nothing happened. No one installed. We had no money. It was beautiful. But then maybe a couple days later, someone installed the app and paid us $50 a month. And maybe a couple weeks later, it was $200 a month, and then $800 a month. And really quickly, it started to grow. And we applied to Y Combinator, which is a whole other story. We ended up getting in, and we quit our jobs and have been full-time on Postscript ever since.
Wow. That is so fascinating. So would you consider yourself the technical co-founder, or that's going to be Adam? That's Adam. Okay.
We have a kind of unique distribution of roles. It works really well for us.
Yeah.
And I have two co-founders, Adam and his brother Colin.
Okay.
Adam is our CEO.
Yep.
Adam runs product design and engineering.
Yep.
Adam also oversees finances. He does our fundraising.
Amazing.
Colin's our COO.
Yep.
Colin's kind of our secret weapon.
Yep.
Colin runs all kinds of stuff. Right now, he's building our second product.
Yep.
And he originally built the front end of the application, and I run the go-to-market organization.
Wow, that's amazing. And how big are you guys now? What's your head count?
Around 220.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Take me a little bit through that transition, because that's something we're going through here at Triple as well, where something I've found paradoxical, and it's true, it's just, again, paradoxical, where like more headcount doesn't necessarily mean more productivity. So how are you, because you guys are also distributed, correct?
We are. Fully.
So how are you taking the team of 3, 5, 7, 10 to 200 plus?
More headcount does not necessarily equal more productivity. It's true.
Yeah.
The answer is in starts and fits. Something I reflect on a lot is that our role as founders and my role as a founder has changed dramatically with each company stage. You joined Triple pretty early, right?
Super early.
What number?
Ish. I mean, within the first 10.
And now it's over 100, right?
Oh, we're almost, we're like $150,
okay.
170 something.
You've seen all the stages I'm going to talk about, right? Like the roles and dynamics, all that stuff changes like crazy.
Crazy.
So for us, we were remote from the start. We started off in that like family environment where it's like 10 people. We're lucky. A handful of them are still on the team today, which is super cool. And, slowly we, got up to maybe around 20, 25. Then all of a sudden it was 50.
Yeah.
And at 50, things really changed. And having personal, deep relationships with everyone at the company, that went away.
Possible, yeah.
And then we scaled really quickly from there to around like 150 200, and then we slowed down over the last year a lot. And right now our headcount growth is picking back up again. But, you know, just with the market changing, we slowed things down last year. But getting good at each stage, I think, is like one of the biggest challenges of entrepreneurship for me thus far, because the like skills that you need to be a good operator with each stage look so different. Like,
so well put.
Early on, it is the grind, right? And doing everything yourself, and really honing whatever motion you're working on right then. I mean, I saw you do that on the community side of things, like incredibly, right? But then now, even though it's still about the grind, it's always the grind. Like, it's much more about, can I recruit a team of leaders that are going to go recruit like their outstanding teams, and then can I like support them and try to align their goals? And that requires much less like moment to moment action from me, and way more patience and way more focus on like organization wide communication. And that's a very different set of skills than when I was trying to take 15 demo calls a day.
So, man, I'm like having like PTSD flashbacks. You're absolutely right. And there's a certain aspect to one of the things that we realized, because we did kind of like a blitz scale, and then these people were incredible. The pedigrees are great. But the challenge was we didn't have a lot of SOPs and procedures in place. And one that works at the lower levels, because it's just, you know, we're going to figure it out. We're a tribe.
Right.
Be generalist. You can kind of just throw them a spear, say like, go hunt, figure it out. Specialists, like, I don't know if it sounds like pejorative, they need to be managed. It's not necessarily they need to be managed, but they like need a lot of direction. They need more hands-on stuff. They need procedures. They need like, I only send emails, bro. You know what I mean? Like, well, I need you to go jump on this, or I need you to go jump on this. And it's not that they're necessarily don't want to do it. It's just, that's the whole point why you hired them, is
Sure.
that you escalate into these specialists. But we found that when we first scaled with headcount, there was a culture fit in that, because these people came from these bigger orgs that had all these processes in place, that had all these things in place. And there was this kind of productivity hole, if you will, because everybody else was so still in that generalist mindset. And so
Yeah.
I think it's not only the people, but the culture that you're cultivating as well. And the other thing is, it's going to be interesting to get your take on this. We have essentially 3 hubs. So we have Austin, we have Columbus is the proper HQ where AJ and Max sit out of, and then we have all our dev and engineering out of Jerusalem. And keeping that like culture and connectivity, man, it's really hard. And to your point, and I'll stop rambling here, that was one of the challenges as the company grew, where I really enjoyed running like a 6 to 8 person team, a bunch of killers, and like, let's get it done. And like, for the majority of my tenure, it was just crush, build, crush, grow, build.
Sure.
And then you start to get into like if you saw my calendar, I mean, your calendar's probably egregious too, but like my calendar
It's gross.
Yeah.
But I bet we both have disgusting calendars.
It was, dude, I didn't have time to use the restaurant. It was just back to back to back,
Yeah.
8 to 6, 8 to 7. I'm on Central, so all the bosses are on Eastern, so they're already ahead of me. The Israel team is dev, so they're 8 hours ahead. So you just had this like deluge of stuff. And it was just so interesting, because I always had that thought, like, the team captain needs to be the best player. And I've realized like that's so wrong, where it's like sometimes you just want your best player to go play and concentrate on being the best player. And there's leaders that are really good leaders,
Yeah.
/ managers. And that was something that I'd always looked down upon. But to your point, like being able to plug in a leader that can put in procedures, that can then hire up a team to then produce, man, it's so hard to find those people. It's so hard to find those people. And they're usually
Totally.
taken.
They're usually
so like the
taken.
immediacy's not there, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, cool, yeah, that sounds great, but I'm either a VP or a C-suite or something, so I need
Sure.
a couple months to spin down my role. I can't
Yeah.
just leave tomorrow. And then, so how did you guys like hire on Vibe, or like how did you build these people up? Because I think you're right, like that 50-person number, it sounds like cheesy because it's just so perfect, but that's when things, the wheels start to shake a little bit. To your point of like, I can't just yell in a room and everybody's aligned.
No. A couple things were interesting in our journey that we got right or got wrong or got lucky or unlucky with that stand out. So one is we've been fully remote from the start.
Yep.
And in the early days, that was easy.
Yep.
Now it's more challenging.
Yeah.
It's definitely a challenge. It requires a ton of energy and effort.
Yep.
But everyone's on equal playing field.
Yep.
And so even though it's hard to not have everyone in a room, no one's in a room.
Yep.
And so since the beginning, the company's gotten comfortable with like asynchronous communication. We do a lot of Looms. People do written updates. Meeting recordings get sent out.
Yep.
And if someone isn't live, our culture just like tolerates and absorbs that.
Yeah.
Which I think helps with like, you know, different teams getting scaled out differently.
Totally with you.
The other thing that has only gotten more intense for us is like, and actually our like people and HR team takes lead on this, is tops down communication.
Yes.
We're now very good at cascading communications. Like this team gets updated, and then this team gets updated, and then the whole company gets updated on like regular cadences about XYZ. And so we just did our company kickoff a couple days ago, and it was like an incredibly fun 3-hour event, very well orchestrated, where it was themed like Coachella. Our mascot's Bub, so it was called Bubchella. But and so I was in a bucket hat. But
as you do,
as one does. But the point is like we've gotten a really good cadence with like cross company communications, like weekly, quarterly, holding everyone tight on goals, reflection, etc. But the bigger thing that stands out about what you were saying, and as I reflect, is like this is a cliche, but I do find that like the most successful hires at Postscript are like better than us at their thing.
100%.
Right. And you know, I'm probably like pretty dangerous in certain arenas.
Yeah.
Adam's a really dangerous engineer and like product leader. Colin is extremely dangerous. But when I think about the like leaders that we're like lucky to have assembled, you know, Mike, who's somewhere outside, he's our CMO.
Love Mike.
I tried to recruit Mike to be our second hire.
Interesting.
And Mike smartly, very smartly, was like, "This is way too early for me." Right? It's like he's like, "This isn't my stage." And
I love that.
We really wanted to hire Mike to lead marketing as our second hire years ago, but we stayed close and we stayed in touch. And it took a few years, but after a couple of years, Mike decided to join as CMO when we were at around 50 people, and when there was 8 figures in ARR, and when like the pitch was figured out and the product was sticky, and we were like later stage because now we're in his sweet spot as an operator. And so like I don't necessarily think that. I think it's okay. And something I try to talk about at Postscript is that like in a fast changing startup, the only thing that's inevitable is change. 100%. And so it's okay if like your job maybe morphs into something that isn't your strengths, or if you don't love anymore, like that's okay, because this journey is going to be crazy and it's going to continue to evolve, and like you're going to be able to lean into certain strengths of yours at different times. And like there's just going to be a lot of change. And if you can learn to embrace that change, it's going to make the ride much more comfortable. And so like when I think about leadership recruitment, like you were saying, and like building the exec team, building the leadership team, oftentimes there's folks who can scale really, really well across stages, which is amazing. And oftentimes there's, people have a sweet spot that they prefer to operate in.
I think that's something that I didn't get. And that's definitely, I was that guy, where it was just like, I had no desire in running a 300-person marketing team or 150-person marketing team. Because to your point,
you like being the captain of the pirate ship.
I love having just the SEAL Team 6 of like, let's move mountains. Don't tell me how to do it. Just tell me what you need when you need it. And let's run. And like that, the autonomy, the freedom, the creativity, the building is really what gets me. Like that's where I really want to go. And there's also, as you grow up, dude, there's just more guardrails that get thrown on. Like that's why if you look at like all the big B2B CMO SaaS people, they're like, for lack of a better word, these nerdy quants. Like all there is lead velocity, MQLs, SQLs. What are we doing here? There's nobody like really having fun, or like it's because it gets to a place of like almost formulaic, and it's just like, okay, cool. Well, if I dump this much site traffic in, and if I look at these conversion rates per channel, and it starts to become like these mathematics, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. And like, again, that's what you need at a big company. But that for me was, so I'd set up my week every Sunday, and I would just set my week up. I'm like building my torture chamber. Like none of this stuff gets me, because it was politics, it's meetings, it's all these things of like, I got away from, like, to your point, the things that really fired me up. And it's not necessarily like I was bad at them, but I really think that people do their greatest work when what they're really, really awesome about, or what they are really good at, passionate about, and then they can push forward those business objectives. Because
Totally.
that's one of the challenges too in that fast-paced growth is, how do I not only allocate my resources, but how do I measure success? Because it's this ever-changing, especially in those like really, really early stages before you start to get into these more like step changes where it's like, okay, cool, new product, now we're here. But when you're really getting into that PMF, like you're saying, 8 figures and stuff like that, it's like real money, but now you're like, okay, cool, where's the growth come from? And I think that was something that I almost think of like an evolution of a human, right? Whereas you're in this baby phase and you're finally in this like, and we were like in this adolescent phase, like having fun, but at the same time there needed to be this, like, we need to grow up, and or especially too, because it's what the founders, like, it's their boat, they get to drive it, and they want to be this massive company, which is awesome. But that just has different input success vectors.
Yes.
And to your point, like, it changes roles, right? Like, and so that's one of the things that was really fascinating to me. It was very eloquently articulated, because that was something that I experienced firsthand. And AJ and Max have been amazing. They're amazing leaders. But that was something that was really interesting, because you have this like championship team, but now you're in like either a different league or it's like a different game or something. It's like,
totally,
that current configuration might not be the configuration that gets you to the next milestone of the company.
I'll tell you, and I know they wouldn't mind. They don't care about this kind of stuff. I'll tell you something from within our like founder dynamics. Yeah. So I feel one of the things I love most about my job is the fact that like we're now 5 years in, and like me and Adam and Colin are still like full-time 100% in the business running the company. Yep. Which is like, now you didn't used to, but now you get comments from investors where they're like, that's kind of rare. Yep. Like, it's rare to still have all the co-founders in. And but our roles have changed over time. And at times we've had to give each other hard feedback about like growth areas for one another. Or another thing that comes to mind is like, between us at different times, maybe we've like pulled back from more of like scaled management versus like being an IC focus, which was really fun in the founder days. But then you like find yourself back to it maybe, and you've grown a little bit and you're ready for it, or you're like, you have more of an appetite for that like challenge that before didn't feel like a fit for your skills. And so it's just, company building is super interesting. It's like one of the most stimulating, never solved things that there is.
Unparalleled high, man. It's kind of what you're talking about when that first person signs up, then the next 10 people sign up, like, people actually want this? Like, what?
It's crazy. Go. It's something that's really fun for me is in Postscript is that like, and you're in the same situation, we now work serving people that we used to be.
Yes.
Right? And so like, it's interesting for me to watch, especially like, the Twitter sphere that we both inhabit, because like, I try to like stay off the pedestal. Yeah. I'll get up on there when it comes to SMS a little bit, but like for a long time I was an e-commerce marketer. Yeah. And so I have a lot of empathy for and a lot of care for e-commerce entrepreneurs and marketers, and I like know a bit about it. I've like logged my time in the dashboard. Yeah. And it's super interesting how it feels like sometimes in our space, it's like a bit more about who's shouting loudest than like who's right. And like the amount of like pontification that'll happen from people who've never actually been in seat is super nauseating at times. But I say that just because even though that's like the dark side of it, the bright side of it is that like I spent 6 years in e-commerce marketer, and now I get to work for marketers, and that's pretty fun.
That was always my little joke where like we were just out at Shop Talk, and again, nothing wrong with that thing. It's just like my nightmare fuel, like walking the floor and stuff like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is just, it's to your point of like the changing roles and stuff.
You're for the Wallies. You're not for the like. No, you're not for the like extra corporate.
If it has a booth at it, bro, I'm out. Like it's just not my vibe. But we wanted to put a presence there, see as we grow, blah blah blah. But yeah, it's just fascinating as you grow. And the other cool thing is, or sorry, the point I was making was that one of the coolest parts when I was CMO was that I had this, like, again, joke about it with this B2B SaaS daddy money, right? Like, we have these incredible economics that like D2C brand couldn't throw the whaleys. Like, it would just, there's no ROI. Like, it would be so hard to back into. For us, it was so worth it. And so, and then I get to hang out with the coolest people, because I think D2C operators are the coolest, because not only are they either A, using their own money, but they're also, there's this almost rabid conviction of how can I make this thing better, versus you get like in big companies you can hide. It just is what it is.
Dude, e-commerce entrepreneurship is one of the rawest forms of entrepreneurship.
So well put.
And also, it is, to your point, it's very like improvement focused.
Yep.
And like, no matter what happens on social media, what I've found is that like in person or in live private interactions, the vast majority of it is pretty positive.
Oh, it's so
and
positive.
Like very like supporting one another and like knowledge sharing based, which I think is fundamentally cool. You don't see that in many industries.
No, you don't. No, that's spot on. Yeah, to your point, I think that's, there is definitely a little cabal of like really awesome people. And that's the other thing too, is there's definitely a loud minority of like douches sometimes, but for the most part, I think D2C is decent in the sense of like people try and pay it forward and stuff. If you can find the right people, it can be a really engrossing group. But
you said something to me when we met that has been stuck in my brain ever since.
Oh, look at this memory burn.
Because it kind of, can we curse on here?
Of course, yeah, of course.
It kicked me up a little bit. So Postscript has been around longer than Triple.
Yep.
And I like to think of myself as like a community-minded person.
100%.
And I think a lot of Postscript's approach has been like fostering word of mouth by by like sticking to our values and by like engaging in the community. But you said something to me when we met that you were like, look, I have this vision and this aspiration where like people sign up for Triple Whale 50% because of the product and the value they get from the product, and 50% because of the community and the value they get from the community. And that's a pretty, like, we're both in B2B SaaS now. That's a pretty audacious claim for a SaaS marketer to say in a good way. And it messed me up because I think of myself and I think of Postscript. I'm super proud of Postscript for how much we are there for our customers and we obsess about customer support and all that stuff. And we try to be very ethically grounded. But like, I'd never aspired to that level of like community anchoring. And it's just been in my mind ever since because I think it was like raising the bar a little bit. And I don't think most of B2B operates within that world, but I think it's totally possible.
I do too, man. I think that's one of the things that we really showed people, that it can be a pathway to profitability. The other thing that I was trying to do was kind of in that same vein, where I wanted people to think of us not as a subscription, but as a membership. Because it's a subscription, there's nothing wrong with them, but it's this kind of cold transactional relationship. You do a thing for me, I give you money every month, everybody's happy. A membership is something you're part of. A membership is something you don't want to cancel. A membership is something like, dude, I get this, I get that, I get access to events, I get access to weird merch, webinars, all these things. And then you start to put it in like a totality of value. Then the monthly membership price doesn't really seem as aggressive when you start to add these things. Because that was the other thing, is like, at our price point, we really need to, stack as many things as we can in there as well. And just by the very nature of it, I think that our product is very, not really explicitly collaborative, but like there's a lot of collaboration around it. Because to your point, man, marketing, especially D2C marketing, is so hard, especially with the headwinds that we faced, all the changes and stuff. And so there's a certain aspect of just being in there with homies and homiettes of like, that, man, it really happens. And like, candidly too, when people like you, dude, they churn less. They'll tell you about product stuff like in a non-public forum. Like, there's just all these benefits. The only caveat I would say, and I think this is why a lot of B2B SaaS companies don't go down this pathway, you need to build these relationships with sincere intentions.
That's exactly. I don't think they have the capacity to.
They do not. That's to me, anyways, the silver bullet there, because people like you almost. It's almost like a sketchy salesperson, where it's like, oh, you're actually selling me. Let me take off this mask. Where it's like, so many of the things that we planned in the community were so basically like not net acquisition. It was just, dude, how can we generate a bunch of value for these people that then we'll build in some reciprocity for them either to take the, like our demos exploded with the whaleys. Like there was real business impact when you have community. But to be fair, I think the challenge is community and content are really hard, and they are more of an exponential than a linear. And so that first month to 3 months to like the first thing I started at Triple was a newsletter and a podcast. Like those are the things we needed to get out the door, get out the door, get out the door. And the first, again, 3 months or something, like here is a crazy stat. In 2022, Jan 1, so the very beginning of last year, we had something like, 5,000 opens or something, 3,000 opens in whale mail. And the last whale mail of the year is almost 45,000.
Wow.
And so, but again, like this was off the back of like 3 months of like me literally writing a newsletter every day, making sure it goes out every Tuesday, Thursday, making sure that the content was there. Because that's the other thing is, if you're going to build a sincere relationship and you're going to have this implicit social contract of like, hey, dude, if I'm letting you in my inbox and I'm giving you time, it needs to be valuable.
It has to be good.
And so to your point, I think that was one of the things that AJ and Max really hit on the head with bringing me in was it was much easier to drop a D2C operator and then let him figure out B2B SaaS than taking a B2B SaaS operator and having him or her try and penetrate the D2C community. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. And like sometimes it's just fun to jam over battle scars, right? Or it's just like, fuck, dude, we had so many just crazy agency days and all this stuff. But yeah, man, I really appreciate that. But I think that's community content and education were the big 3 pillars for us. And it really helped, bolster everything. The other thing, community is almost like organic for D2C, where just everything's better.
Sure.
Everything gets better when you launch stuff, when you do stuff, but it's hard. That was my first hire, was head of community.
Interesting.
Yeah. I kind of want to circle back a little bit just for personal interest. Tell me a little bit about how you goal set. Are you guys OKRs? Like, how do you guys kind of align people? And tell me a little bit about this cascade of information, because I'm very interested in that as well.
We do not do OKRs.
Oh,
We've
pillaged for that, but
we've tried OKRs a couple times. I've been at so many companies that have tried OKRs. I am of the believer of the conspiracy theory that Google rolled out OKRs to mess with every other company out there.
So, because Andy Grove could do it at Intel, who is this generational leader, and now it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is going to work for you.
They seem crazy to me.
Consumers are 35 times more likely to read a text message from your brand than an email. 35 times more eyeballs means 35 times more opportunities to sell more stuff. At Postscript, all we do is SMS, and we've built the only SMS revenue platform for Shopify e-commerce stores to make this their #1 revenue channel. Give your brand everything it needs to build a thriving SMS revenue strategy, including built-in compliance and a support team guiding you every step of the way. Quickly grow your list of subscribers using our pop-ups, checkout collection, opt-in links, and keyword replies. Create automated flows that capture zero-party data from subscribers. Then, use it to send personalized texts and have one-to-one conversations at scale. Manage incoming messages that need immediate responses and reply within Postscript or your help desk of choice. Drive more purchases by leveraging our team to step into live sales conversations. With Postscript, you create deeper relationships with your customers, so they feel like they're texting with a friend. Develop relationships, deliver experiences, and drive results. Make SMS your #1 revenue channel with Postscript.
Over time, what we've gotten to, and we're still not perfect at it, is we've really, and this didn't come early. This did not come early. Early on, we had quarterly revenue goals.
Yep.
Right. But now we are super focused when it comes to our mission, our strategy, and our positioning.
Oh, I love that.
And all of those are 1 to 3 bullets. The whole company could tell you what they are. Along with the whole company could tell you what our values are. And when we do a quarterly kickoff, that mission, strategy, positioning slide is in there like 10 times.
I love that.
Like, we're going to bring it up in the board meeting that we have next week. Like, that anchors us. And then in addition to that, we have a top line revenue goal per quarter and per year. And then each of the core teams have their contributing goal on the business side, right? So under me, so marketing has their opportunity commit. They also have an install goal, but that's more just kind of our space. The sales team has their bookings number, and they also have a revenue number that we track, but we mostly anchor towards bookings. And this customer success organization has an NDR number. And those three roll together into the revenue number. And like,
that's perfect.
We track that quarter over quarter. It's relatively simple. Everyone can understand that and distill that, and it's easy to track. The one thing underneath that we could still tighten up a little bit is like tracking the strategic priorities of each department per quarter.
Fair.
Right? And we don't really have the whole like giant objectives ladder thing. I think we do a little bit tighter of a job. It varies by department, but we do a pretty good job of that. And the other thing that we do is, as a company over time, we've just slowly learned through like scars, the premium on focus. And so,
man, that's so well put.
Right now, this year, Postscript has 2 priorities. All of Postscript has 2 priorities. Every single person at the company could tell you what they are because we never shut up about them. We track and report out on how they're going.
Amazing.
And each of them has an executive owner. One is owned by Mike, another's owned by Colin, my co-founder. And like, that's what Postscript is focused on this year, are these 2 things. And there's goals associated, and like, we say no to doing a lot of stuff that seems really valuable or is cool because it isn't connected to those 2 things. So that's kind of like how we run the business today. And on the comms side, like you were saying, I think we have a pretty unconventional HR department. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of.
Kind of like an oxymoron though, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But it's really because the woman who leads it, her name is Jen Raines-Loring. She's been with Postscript since early on, probably 20-ish or so. And she is not a traditional HR person. She's been like COO of a bunch of companies. She's an operator. She got into HR later on. She loves it. Harvard Business grad. She's dangerous. And she believes that HR should be a value creation center for a company. And so they do great people work and HR work, but they also do things like they own centralized company communications. They are like,
that's a brilliant
and
idea.
they do a tight job of like,
that's such a good idea.
Ensuring like the executive team has updates, our leadership organization has updates, all people managers, the rest of the company. They run our all hands like a Swiss watch. They run our quarterly kickoffs and retrospectives. And we built up these cadences over time where like they partner with the different departments and the different like finance organizations to pull numbers.
That is interesting.
And they assemble people, and it just has us running like really, really tightly.
That's a really interesting take. Yeah, that's something that, wow, that's a really interesting take. I really like that take a lot. Are you guys Slack, or like, how do you guys comms?
We live in Slack.
Yeah,
we don't really do any internal email at all.
I love that. Oh, neither do we.
People get promoted via email, so it's officially documented. That's it. We live in Slack.
Yeah, no, I love Slack. It's especially now that there's those little segments that you can build and stuff. We can do all that stuff. I'm a big Slack guy too. I really like that though. That's a really, because that was also the other thing, was those updates are so important. One of the things that I was telling my directs when I was still running the marketing was one of the most important skills, especially because I work so close to AJ and Max, and even I had no clue what's going on because there's just so many things going on. Being able to wrap your story of success in data and brag on yourself, and it's so important. Like, because people like, you know, everybody has their own world, but being able to like post little wins, or like, here's what we're doing, here's what, it's so important, man. And I think that that's something that it's awkward for a lot of people to like either brag on themselves or narrative build a little bit. And I think it's a really important, especially too, if you aspire to be in leadership, because that's essentially the other thing. As you start to get higher and higher up, it's like, how can you tell the story in such a way that, you know, obviously you don't want to manipulate anything,
sure,
but there needs to be like, here's the takeaway, or here's what the bet was, or the hypothesis, here's how it landed, here's what we're going to do.
And I'll tell you, like, as someone who is often, especially in our own environment, there's so much going on that I don't see.
So much.
There's so much going on I don't see. But when people do, you know, take the initiative to like proactively share an update with me over, and there's normal reporting going on, so I don't need it. But if someone's like, hey, Alex, I thought you might like to see this win we had or this lesson I had. Or like, hey, Alex, here was a loss we took, but a lesson we learned. It can be really bad too. I don't take it as them, if it's earnest and grounded, I don't take it as them bragging at all, because I'm just so excited to see Postscript as an organization learning and growing. And so like, I think that is a good career building muscle to have, is like, I wouldn't even call it self-promotion. I would call it just like sharing your work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a good muscle.
No, that's so well put. I had a really great boss. I used to work at Whole Foods, and he had a great line that's always stuck with me, where he said, if I have to ask you how something's doing, you're not communicating enough. I thought that was just a really good way to articulate that, where it's like, you want to make sure, because that's the other thing too, as you get into leadership, like there's a certain aspect of rallying the troops, right? Like
Totally.
you don't work in a silo, and it's like, hey, here's the strategic initiatives. Here's how they're going to support your departments as well. This is why they're going to be so awesome. Is everybody cool? Like, can I have the money or no?
Yeah.
Or like, what's going on here? Because it starts to get into a resource pitch, like, and not in a good way or a bad way, but at the end of the day, like the founders drive the boat, and they want to know what's going to happen, how they want the capital deployed. And there has to be, you have your board meeting in a few days. Like, you guys aren't operating in a silo. You know what I mean? Like, you guys have bosses too. And like, so I have this, and it'll be interesting to hear your take. I have this theory. If you're not the founder or the owner of the business, the only thing that I think people care about, and I don't mean this in like a mean, weird way, but it's just making their boss happy. What do you think about that thesis?
You think the only thing people care about is making their boss happy?
If you're not the owner or the founder, where you have these macro level things, where if you roll up to somebody, because that's ultimately who decides your fate. And so if they're happy but the rest of the company hates you, it doesn't really matter. Or that's my thesis, is like, as long as there's one person happy and it's your boss, like, you're doing a good job.
I'm going to abstain from that one, just because I've now been in the founder role for 5 years, that I feel like I have these moments from time to time where I don't know, I show up at work, I like everyone at Postscript. I really like what we do. I come in pretty positively and upbeat. And this may come off as a little entitled, but like sometimes I'm aware that I like lose track a little bit, that like not everyone has my experience, or like not everyone has my like upside or commitment to the business, and they shouldn't, by the way.
Sure.
None of them should. I don't expect that at all. But like, it's easy for me to default to just like assuming that everyone will be as excited and committed as me, and that's like not the case. So I don't know. It's hard for me to put those shoes on.
No, that's fair. To your point, I don't think this is even a vector of excitement. It's just, too long didn't read, if your boss is happy, your life is going to be better than if you are quote unquote performing and your boss is not happy. Yeah. Like, it just is what it is. You roll up and again, this is kind of some of the things that I learned in the C-suite of stuff, is like, as you start to get into leadership and everybody's kind of moving and jiving, like, there's politics at play. And so you really want to make sure that everything that you're doing, which is really nice to your point of like, when you have priorities, decisions are easy. And so it's like, is this going to push this or this forward? How and at what magnitude, and what's it going to cost us? Yes, no, okay, boom, and then go. Or yes, and then build the strategy, build the tactics, farm out those tactics, get it done. But no, I love that, man. That's beautiful. I really like everybody being on the same page, because I think that's also how you keep the excitement. That's the other thing that I learned in leadership was culture and morale.
Oh my God.
That is such a like bullshit, like, this is what HR people make their money from or whatever. Dude, it so matters. Having everybody rowing the same way, excited, being able to, like, we had a few little kind of like PR cases of like, how do we handle this? How do we handle that? One of them happened on Shabbos, where I couldn't talk to the leadership team because AJ and Max are totally offline. So It was like having to get that done, and being able, I think, to your point of like candidly communicating with the company in a meaningful way is something that it can't be understated. It goes so far, because to your point, you kind of get into like almost like, and again, not to gas you up, but like a celebrity style role with newer employees, because they weren't here in the the crack days of where we're all drinking coffee, packing up the first package, sending it out.
The power dynamics are pretty dramatic. Yeah.
And so like just being able to, as a leader, reach out to your directs and be like, hey, you're doing a good job, or hey, maybe this is an opportunity to grow. it matters a lot. And that was some things that I really not took for granted, but didn't realize the importance of early on, because man, team morale, like it's kind of almost, there's so many weird parallels to like an army or like a military and a company sometimes. Like not all of them, but like,
and I know people don't love that.
They don't.
But
hey, I know I get on it for it too.
Yeah, it does feel like there is. And like when I think about a like well bonded team and a team with high morale, it's a team that is resilient.
Yep.
Right. And like in any industry, whether it's SaaS or e-commerce, something else, like what's inevitable are the ups and downs. And like that is what's inevitable for anyone. No one had easy street the whole time. But a like resilient organization is such a meaningful thing to be a part of. And yeah, that's probably my like favorite part of my job is when I get to like meet or speak with and I see a Postscript who's like showcasing resiliency in their work. Like that is super cool and very inspiring for me.
Very inspiring. I see individual contributor for everybody listening. Yes. We're doing a little corporate speak over here.
Yeah. We're getting into it.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Let's get into some highlights and lowlights. What's been kind of some of the bigger, or like, this is amazing, and what are some of the, man, that was a very big opportunity to grow.
Yeah. Okay. So an opportunity to grow for me early on was that when we started Postscript, my default was to react to things out of my control from a place of fear. One of our core values is fearlessness. I was not being fearless. And that was something that like Adam and Colin, they like gave me feedback on early on. It took some like work on my part, but I think I've like gotten dramatically better at it, where something would happen, you know, we'd hear an announcement about a competitor or something, right, and you just immediately freak out, versus now you just kind of shrug. And we were talking before, right? Like both our spaces are competitive. Like SMS is an extremely competitive space, and our two main competitors are both gigantic, very, very well-funded companies. And Postscript has like persevered and beaten out a lot of other small players. And really now there's 3 big players in SMS, and we're one of them. And that takes me to like my next kind of high and low, which is both a high and a low, which has been competition. Yeah. Like in the early days, I think that we felt beat up on at times by competition, especially competition that was much better funded. And, you know, they would maybe engage in tactics that like we wouldn't, and it would work for them.
We have, but same but different. Yeah.
But now our thinking has totally changed. Now it's a highlight. So now when I think about competition, Colin was the first one to say this. Colin doesn't do interviews. Colin's not out in the public looking at him. Colin's kind of our Yoda.
There you go.
And Colin is convinced that despite the huge challenges we've had with competition from Attentive and Klaviyo over time, that like Postscript is way bigger than it would be if neither of them existed.
That's fair.
Because they've pushed us and we've had to push them, and like through that competition, Postscript has had to get so much better, so much faster.
That's a really good point.
And we've had to work so much harder and get so much better as founders, and the team has had to get so much better and work so much harder. And like the level of excellence required to win in this market is high. And so like, I think that's super cool. And like now, I love the competition, especially because like it feels like the market has started to, and the e-commerce community has started to like, just like acknowledge and appreciate how Postscript does business, and like kind of shine a light on some of the things that some of our competitors do in a negative way. And so, I mean, the last 6 months at Postscript, we haven't really spoken about this. The last 6 months at Postscript has been like an incredible momentum building period. Like the like signature brands who've like left these major players and moved their SMS businesses to Postscript, or just starting SMS but decide to come to Postscript, it's been like our best 6 months ever, not even close. And
which is incredible when you think of the market headwinds too.
Totally. It's incredible. And I mean, that's a testament to the team, but like it also goes back to your question of like the highlight and low light. Like I'll wrap this story here, which is at our quarterly kickoff events, we have an investor or an early advisor of ours come and just give a talk. And some interesting people have come. Adam Bain came to one, who was the CRO and president of Twitter. He invested in us. A lot of really interesting operators. And to this one last week, a guy named Tim Brady came and did a Q&A with us. And Tim Brady was our partner at Y Combinator.
Okay.
No one really knows who Tim Brady is, but Tim Brady's a legend. Tim Brady was the first employee at Yahoo.
Oh, wow.
And then was there for like 10 years.
Oh,
and was
wow.
their chief product officer, launched a million things and 1,000 people under him. Like, Tim Brady helped create the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And, Yahoo Sports, Yahoo News, all this stuff. And he was talking about our space because he picked us to join Y Combinator. He like gave us the nod. And he was saying how he's like, I knew that what you all were doing would be valuable to customers.
Mm-hmm.
I also knew that it didn't really seem like it would be super defensible, right? Like, you guys would have competition. But sometimes you just have to like pick a team that you believe is going to compete and win.
Yeah.
He's like, and that's what I saw in you guys. And that meant a ton. I hadn't heard him say that story before. And that got me so fired up. And like, that's one thing I really am loving about Postscript right now, is we are in a competitive mindset. We are like ready to take on the world. And so that's been competition to the highlight and a low light.
No, I think that's a really interesting take because, one, this is going to come off probably callous, but it's so unifying to have an enemy. That's a jobs thing where it's like, who are we going to hate and like go after and like, like not in like a malicious way, but it's like,
but they're who we have in business. They're who we have to be better than.
Yes.
Right. Like in our space, it's less of like a take them on directly and more of like, okay, if someone's buying Triple Whale or if someone's considering buying Postscript, it's like, you need to have the best feature set, the best team, and probably the best like strategy that you're articulating for how to use the product. And so like, okay, great, we got to go check those 3 boxes. That's not going to be easy.
It's so cool. But what I love your take on it is, because of that anxiety and fear comment, you're still operating kind of with this competition mindset, but it's in an abundance mindset now, not a scarcity mindset.
Yes.
When you get into a scarcity mindset, it gets into weird places. And to be fair, I don't think a scarcity mindset is bad. It's just not a place for a growth company. Like it's you're either turning something around where you need to cut off some fat, or you're going into an austerity measure. A P&E just acquired you, and your P&L needs to get in a much better place. I don't think scarcity really has a place in a high growth company. Like, it has to be like, guys, how are we going to grow? And that doesn't mean like just spraying the money gun. I don't mean it by that. It's just kind of the mentality that you articulated of like, hey, how are we going to get better? Like, okay, that was good. That wasn't good. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it sounds a little bit semantics, but I think it's so interesting, because the other thing is, when you're in a scarcity mindset, every loss feels like a failure. And you just said it, and I felt it. Like, no matter how much success you see, there's so many troughs within those peaks.
Oh yeah.
And to your point of the resiliency, like there's a great Bezos line where he says, differentiation is survival. And you're just like, oh, I get it. Like, if you outlast these people, like it works. And it's just this perfect mix of culture, aggression, but in a good way, competition, abundance. Like, I really love what you guys are building, man. And in a weird way, I think the market, like, even if you do take quote unquote second place, like, it's still a hell of a business. You're still going to print a ton of money. Not that you guys
are. That's a hell
aren't.
of a business. We're not
That's
taking
not
second.
where you guys are going for. But that's what I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, for that investor betting on you, it's like, hey, here's a big pool of money. Because some of the challenges sometimes when you get into a business is like, even if we won the game, like, would we be happy?
Right. And I think that the outcome-based mindset, the answer is no, right? Which is like, goes back to like, you have to be enjoying the process. You like have to be enjoying the process, because there isn't a magic door behind which is happiness.
No, there isn't. And to your point of like growth, and like you're in these different stages, even when you hit like the mile markers that are incredible, like we're doing 20% month over month, like just bananas numbers. I got caught in not being in the present. And not that you can live there, especially as a leader, like you need to be figuring out, okay, cool, chess 5-6 moves ahead. But I did not do a good job of celebrating and like taking a moment, just be like, hey man, what we're doing here is really incredible. That's my biggest regret, where it's like we did so much crazy cool stuff that Well, yeah, kind of, because it's, like that it needed
your
to be.
team would still want to celebrate with you.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But it needed to be in the moment. You know what I mean? It needed to be like, hey, man, this is really awesome. And again, like, it's not that we didn't quote unquote celebrate, but I think for me, it was more so I was doing so many cool things and I was doing so much that I really got out of the present moment. And that was something that I really regret, because we did do so much incredible stuff. So, like, for any of you aspiring entrepreneurs out there, stop and look at the scenery every now and then. I'm not saying you need to stop the car forever, but it is pretty cool to, like, chill out and, like, hey, take a day of the month or whatever and just celebrate your wins, because they're not always wins, and that helps out to kind of feed the morale. But it also, to your point, like, that makes it more sustainable because it makes it more pleasurable. When you're always winning but not celebrating the win, it doesn't feel like a win, right?
It's funny because also, like, to those out there who aren't celebrating the wins, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Right? Like, our we've worked sometimes with we've worked with an exec coach.
Yeah.
And he gives us so much over not celebrating the wins.
Number
He'll
one
be like,
thing
you
they
guys
tell
just
you.
crossed this enormous milestone. 1% of companies do that. Did you celebrate? And we're like, well, no, because we're worried about this other thing.
Yeah, we're trying to get to 100 million now. Hold on. When we get there, and you can always kick it down the road, but there's just something that's super important that okay, let's get into some rapid fire.
Let's do it.
What is the nicest thing someone has done for you? This is a precursor to the rapid fire. I always stun people with this question.
Oh my.
It's
the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me.
Yeah. A little look into that beautiful soul.
I'm definitely blessed in this sense. I'll just go, like, a very specific thing isn't coming to mind. So what I'll say is that
pontification is off the charts over here, folks.
Kind of broadly speaking, my dad is my best friend.
Love that.
And he's also my, like, business mentor. And he's had a good career, but he's not, a like wealthy magnate.
Yeah, money
of
kind
any
of
kind. Yeah, nothing like that. His, like, unwavering support of me, and his, like, unwavering conviction in me, no matter where I'm at in the like peak trough cycle that we were referencing, has done more to lift me up than anything else I can think of. Whether it was like the true trough of, like, when I was a dropout, to, like, now dealing with things, far beyond my experience level. And that support has been, like, consistent and steady forever, and I'm deeply grateful for it.
That's beautiful. Papa Bella. Let's go. TikTok, overrated, underrated?
Overrated.
Ooh, I like it. YouTube, underrated?
Underrated.
YouTube's underrated.
YouTube's so underrated.
Yeah. I would argue, all things being equal, I think a YouTube subscriber is probably, like, the most valuable subscriber.
It's worth so much more than
a TikTok, Instagram follower, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see the next couple of years of D2C for e-commerce shaping out? Do you think there's going to be, like, some recession on the headwinds? Do you think it's going to hit D2C? Like, what's your thoughts?
No. I have an optimistic outlook.
Okay.
But it's not, like, universalist.
Sure.
So I think that it's probably harder now to be an entrepreneur starting out, especially an entrepreneur starting out without a ton of resourcing, access to capital, etc. I think that 3 years ago, you could start a brand from scratch and just, like, get off the ground. I think it's much harder to do that now. There'll be successful examples of it for sure. But I also think that a lot of the, like, legacy or established brands are in a place to continue winning and to continue branching out and diversifying. So, and when I review the data that I have access to, we see some customers struggling with headwinds or the market or the economy or CPMs, of course, but there is not, like, a widespread pullback that we are seeing. And in fact, we're seeing a lot of folks continue to grow.
No, that's exactly what we're seeing. To your point, though, I do think the barriers to entry into the market are way more challenging now, especially if you're trying to build your business on the back of paid. I think that era is gone.
Yep.
However, I do think that community, I think there's going to be this content to commerce and community to commerce kind of plays. I think that's my two big theses for 2023. I think there's going to be a big abundance of either paid communities or people integrating community into their product even more, which is going to boost retention, repurchase, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the content to commerce play is really what's happening. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I would much rather master the content algorithm right now than the paid algorithm.
So when you say content to commerce, are you talking about like, mini Katana?
Perfect example.
Right?
Isaac,
organic reach that then
Tyler
they're monetizing.
at Peach Babies doing some crazy stuff. A good buddy of mine, Chris Hall, he runs Bruce Bolt. They make these fancy batting gloves.
I know Chris. I like Chris a lot.
Best voice of D2C. Give me that voice.
Okay. This can we riff on this for a sec? Do we have time? So when I worked at that company, Stack Commerce, what they did is they partnered with blogs. This was in like 2011. And they built them white labeled e-commerce stores that sell what they write about. So like they partnered with Mashable, who got a bunch of traffic, and they built a Mashable store and they sell tech products. And that was like early content and commerce, right? That was before the reach of social, when it was like blog reach. And it was essentially affiliate. And I'm like so bullish on that model, and I love that model. And I love all the different incarnations of it. I love watching celebs go direct to consumer to monetize their following. I love watching Ridge buy EDC.
Everyday Carrier, one of the best. That guy's a killer, man. Sean's a killer.
And so like, I totally agree. I think that organic content is underutilized. I don't think everyone can build those businesses. I don't think I could build an organic content business, but I think it's incredibly cool.
That's a fair play. I don't think everybody can do it, but I think if you can do it, or again, if you can align with somebody like, again, bring it out the Bruce Bolts. And they found this just random TikToker that's basically just like about getting jacked and hitting homers. And like his TikTok just blew up, and then they basically like seed these products in there. And so they have this like nice little deal with them where it's like he has all this distribution, and then he gets a little sauce, and then the product's on the back end. So I don't know, I'm just super bullish on it, just because, again, I think paid is incredible, but paid is, again, I say this all the time, but paid's more of a fuel on the fire. And so I think a lot of people start out too early, and then they basically extinguish the kindling that they have with that fuel. But no, I'm just bullish. I think content to commerce and paid communities are going to be, I think they're going to be the 2023 thing, especially too because the information space is getting so crowded. You have the AI in here, you have that. I also too totally agree with you to your point of we're seeing a lot of growth, because I do think, especially with the proliferation of AI, tangible stuff's actually going to become more in vogue. Where people are going to want like things again versus like, because did the AI make it? Like, no, this is good old fashioned human sweat that made this. And I think there's still a lot of thirst out there for that.
Let me tell you this about the AI thing.
Hit me.
There's going to be a bunch of SMS companies shipping a whole bunch of really, really bad AI features. They're just going to stick chat. They're going to stick GBT inside their product to do back and forth and to write content. And it's going to be unrefined, and it's going to be premature, and it's going to be really bad. And I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty terrible. And I can't think of a worse channel to mess up on than SMS. It's so intimate that you really want to nail your communications there. You don't want to really be, well, it'd be beautiful. Creative destruction, baby. Favorite place to travel to and why?
Egypt. I've never been anywhere like it.
Okay. Cairo or whereabouts?
Cairo and roundabout down the Nile, the classic thing. I've never been anywhere like that. Favorite place I've traveled though is Greece.
Yeah.
I really like
the
Greece.
mainland. Where at?
Both.
All of it. Okay.
Yeah. I like the food is, I like Mediterranean diet. It's cheap.
Yep.
People are interesting. I like the vibe, but I also like what constitutes like culture there.
Yeah.
Where like they're going to sit in this family restaurant and like sing folk songs and smoke some cigarettes until like 3 a.m. on a Saturday night. And like that's just talk. And that's a great time.
Dude, I couldn't agree with you more. It's when you get out of the States and you travel, you realize how perverted our relationship with like food and meals have become here in the West. You just sit down, like you get your little TV dinner and you're watching this. My dad remarried a Moroccan woman, and I got to spend 2 weeks in Morocco just going around everywhere. It's the same thing. Like when you eat, dude, it's like this celebration. Everybody's around and stuff. And there's just this, I don't know, there's something really meaningful to, I think that's something that as entrepreneurs and killers and crushers, where it's like stack paper, do all this stuff, super important, definitely helpful. But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like this life's about creating deep connections with people you care about.
100%.
And when you lose sight of that, you can be, I wanted to be an investment banker. Then I kind of saw what investment bankers were. I was like, oh yeah, I'm 40 years old. I'm paid, but like
Sure.
no social network, no significant other, like all these things. It's like, you can get to the mountain at the top with a bunch of gold, but kind of like the Midas touch, if you will. A little Greek mythology plug for you guys. All right, let's wrap it up on this question. You get to take 3 people to dinner. So it's a 4-person table. You're sitting at the head, 3 people, fictional, non-fictional, dead or alive. Who's getting the tickets from Alex? Who's getting the invite?
Whoa.
I got to work on these pauses. These are so, this was a Steve Jobs move as well.
Well, you're throwing stumpers.
Yeah,
I gotta.
Let's go. This is the rapid fire. You come in with the heat.
Okay. I would take Steve Nash.
Ooh. Random Canadian, used to live in Phoenix, so I shout out Suns. Like, also the Mavericks too.
Shout out Suns. Shout out Suns.
Gosh.
What's that? I would take Steve Nash. That was not what you were expecting.
What a random. I mean, seems like a nice enough guy.
Yeah. I would take Steve Nash so I could talk Suns.
Yep.
I would take James Murphy, who's
Why do I not know that?
he's the front man and the creator of LCD Sound System.
Oh, dude, I love it. I know who James Murphy. Now that like
he's an interesting cat.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
If you hit, and his music slaps. Fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
Love LCD.
And I don't know if those two would have things to say to each other, but I think they'd find a way. Yeah, they're both New Yorkers.
James, chill. Yeah,
it'd be fine. And then I would take my girl, Caitlin.
Let's go.
Because she would just absolutely destroy me and make fun of me for inviting those two. And so that would just be a guilty pleasure Alex dinner.
Done deal. Stevie Nash, little LCD, and the lady. I love it. Dude, this has been amazing. Thank you for stopping in. I know you're super, super busy. You got the on-site, or off-site, I guess. You got the board stuff. It's been awesome, man.
Thanks for having me.
How can people get more involved with Postscript? How can they follow you? This time's yours.
So the way to follow me and reach me is Twitter, at @ringmybeller.
Let's go.
Anyone can also email me, alex@postscript.io. I'm super easy to find. And if you want to learn more about Postscript, shoot us a note, hit us up.
Amazing. Some of the best in the business, folks. It is incredible stuff. Go check it out. Go get you some stellar SMS. And can you spill tea yet or no on the news? Not yet.
Everyone will see soon enough.
Soon enough. So there's going to be some new coming out that's really, really impressive. Cool shit going on. What else we got? triplewell.com if you want to get the best analytics, business insights, updates. If you had that crazy thing with Facebook spending all your money, we would have shot you a nice little anomaly detection. So go get your Triple Whale, triplewell.com. And then we have a fantastic newsletter. It goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. You can subscribe right at triplewell.com/whalemail. What else do I got? Oh, we have a sister podcast called Ad Spend with me and Ashvin Mawani. We get all nerdy on tactics. We bring on a D2C operator for the third chair every week. You can check that out on all your podcast subscriptions. And if you would like to see our beautiful faces instead of the auditory nectar, you can just go to youtube.com/triplewhale and get all the podcasts there.
Beautiful.
You're the best. Enjoy Austin, man. This is
Thanks for having me.
Achievement unlock checkbox.
This was fun.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for stopping in. We'll see you on the flip. Bye-bye.